A sphere of gold, a shadowy silent pool, and a speaking amphibian demanding far beyond his station. Not treasure, not authority, but a seat at your dining table, perhaps even in your chamber. Many dismiss it as mere fantasy. But consider this, what if there's more to it? What if we're looking at one of humanity's earliest narratives? A relic of primordial ceremonies from an era when deities assumed animal forms and mysterious forces emerged from aquatic depths. Maybe even a fragmentary, faded memory of actual events. An agreement between a maiden and something decidedly inhuman. Before we explore its mysteries, let's start with its most recognized telling. But pay careful attention, for woven through this peculiar narrative are reverberations of something considerably more ancient. In an age when desires could manifest reality, a monarch's youngest child possessed beauty so extraordinary that even the sun would hesitate each dawn to admire her. Daily, she ventured into the vast woodland beside the castle, where a time-worn linden tree cast shade over a profound, soundless pool, and there she amused herself with her most prized object, a golden sphere. She'd launch it skyward repeatedly, catching it with delicate fingers, until one fateful moment it escaped her grasp. The golden sphere tumbled and disappeared into the murky depths. The royal daughter wept uncontrollably. Her cries resonated among the branches. Then came a voice. "What distresses you, young princess?" it rasped. She peered down to discover a frog emerald-hued, slick-skinned, repulsive, its broad mouth twisted into something resembling a grin. "I'll recover your sphere," the frog offered. "But first, give me your word." The maiden wiped her tears. "Anything you desire," she replied. "Precious stones, my tiara, whatever pleases you." Yet the frog declined. "I wish to rest at your side," he stated. "To share your dish, your goblet, and your sleeping quarters." She wavered, then consented. With that, the frog dove into the pool and surfaced moments later, the golden sphere clamped in his jaws. The princess grabbed it joyfully and fled. She believed herself cunning and the frog quite foolish. She never intended to honor her vow. But when evening arrived at the castle, someone rapped at the entrance. "Princess," the voice croaked. "Youngest child of the monarch, admit me." Frightened, she was compelled to reveal everything to her father. He listened solemnly and declared, "Whatever you've pledged, you must fulfill. Go and welcome the frog inside." And so the frog entered. He occupied her table. He consumed from her dish. He sipped from her goblet. And when he requested to rest in her chamber, the princess shed tears. She dreaded the clammy, wet creature and could scarcely bear to handle him, yet he expected to occupy her lovely pristine bed. The monarch became furious and stated, "You mustn't scorn one who has aided you in distress." So she transported him to her room, gripping him with 2 fingers as though he were something putrid, and placed him in a corner. But as she settled into bed, the frog crept toward her and rasped, "I'm weary, and I desire rest as much as you. Lift me up or I'll inform your father." Her patience shattered. She leaped from the bed, seized the frog, and flung him against the wall with complete force. "Now you'll have your silence, you revolting creature." But in that instant, he transformed. The frigid green exterior became warm flesh. The protruding eyes turned bright and human. A prince appeared before her, attractive and gentle. He spoke of a sorceress's enchantment, and how only her vow and her fury had liberated him. They wed the following day and lived in contentment thereafter. The brothers Grimm positioned the Frog Prince, or the Frog King, as the opening tale in their compilation, and with purpose. They considered it among the most exquisite and ancient narratives throughout German-speaking oral tradition. But it might differ from your recollection. You may have observed the absence of a magical kiss. That kiss arrived much later, probably during the 1800s or early 1900s, as the narrative was gentled for younger audiences. In authentic versions, there's no romance, only wrath. And most peculiarly, this narrative isn't exclusively German. Variants surface throughout Europe and well beyond. The task the frog accomplishes frequently varies. In one obscure variation, no golden sphere exists. Instead, the frog purifies water in a murky, stagnant pool, rendering it potable. And in 16th century Scotland, we encounter the legend of the well at the world's end. A maiden must obtain healing waters to rescue her ailing mother. At the boundary of existence, beside a sacred pool, a frog materializes and vows to assist if she'll consent to wed him. Her elder sisters decline, but the youngest accepts. He secures the water. She honors her promise and shares her chamber with him. Subsequently, the frog is beheaded. This action shatters the enchantment. Repeatedly, the motif recurs: a maiden in difficulty, a pool often described as positioned at existence's boundary, a peculiar inhuman assistant who provides help in return for closeness. And when the vow is respected and a violent deed is performed, the creature undergoes transformation. The particulars may shift: a golden sphere, a curative liquid, a marriage pledge, but the framework endures, reaching backward far deeper than we'd imagined. Why does the narrative invariably commence at a pool? And why is it frequently described as standing at the world's boundary? Throughout Europe, pools and springs represented more than water sources. They were crossing points, locations where the division between realms thinned. In numerous traditions, they served as portals to the realm below itself. These tranquil waters were holy, believed protected by entities or divinities. They didn't merely satisfy thirst. They restored health. They murmured secrets. And occasionally they demanded payment. At holy locations like Llyn Serrig Bach in Wales and the Talland Bog in Denmark, archaeologists have uncovered offerings, weapons, ornaments, even corpses, sacrifices thrown into dark waters, tributes to whatever watched from beneath. And oral tradition reveals what dwelled there. In Slavic lore, there are accounts of the Vodyanoi, green-skinned, webbed-fingered aquatic spirits who gather drowning victims' souls in ceramic vessels, and sometimes they surface seeking a human spouse. In narratives like The Washerwoman's Bargain, a desperate woman pursues a remedy for her dying offspring or spouse. She learns the sole hope resides in the waters of a sacred spring deep within the forest. There she encounters a frog-like male, a Vodyanoi, who provides the water, but solely if she vows to return and marry him. She agrees, collects the water, saves her beloved, but doesn't return. She attempts to deceive the Vodyanoi. She conceals herself, she delays, she prays, but ultimately, he comes for her, sometimes as a slimy suitor, sometimes as a deluge. In certain versions, she surrenders and accompanies him beneath the surface. In others, she perishes or receives a curse. These aren't merely haunting narratives. They're remnants of ancient aquatic ceremonies. It's considerably darker than the Frog Prince, but the structural bones are unmistakable. This motif repeats across traditions. In scripture, the patriarch spouses Rebecca, Rachel, Zipporah all encounter their future husbands at pools. Folklorists propose this is no coincidence. It reflects a forgotten ceremony, the convergence of masculine and feminine at life-sustaining water's edge. A pool at the world's boundary is no common location. In oral tradition, it designates a threshold where the familiar world concludes and something older commences. In many societies, frogs weren't merely creatures. They were messengers from the alternate realm, emblems of fertility, enchantment, even deities in camouflage. To encounter a strange suitor there is deliberate. It's an initiation, an ordeal, the initial phase in an ancient sequence where a mortal maiden meets a being not entirely human and is asked to share beyond mere promises. The Frog Prince stands not alone. Worldwide, we discover a peculiar and ancient narrative structure: a young woman is promised or sold to a monstrous groom. Folklorists term it the animal as bridegroom tale, type ATU 425. And while the Frog Prince possesses its own classification, many scholars view it as an offshoot of the same mythological origin. The themes are unmistakably parallel: a maiden is given to a beast. There is fear, revulsion, and ultimately, transformation. The structure survives in Beauty and the Beast, in East of the Sun and West of the Moon, in India's Snake Prince, and in countless more narratives across Europe and Asia. Even the gods follow this animal bridegroom pattern. In Hindu and Buddhist mythology, the Naga princes, divine serpent entities, inhabit magnificent palaces beneath waters. They frequently claim mortal women as brides. In Greek legend, Zeus assumes animal form to pursue mortal women: a swan when seducing Leda, a bull when abducting Europa. It's divinity wearing a beast's disguise to win or seize a human bride. In 2016, researchers at the University of Lisbon employed phylogenetic analysis, a methodology borrowed from evolutionary biology, to trace folktales across societies. They discovered these animal bridegroom stories are likely over 4,000 years old, originating in Proto-Indo-European civilization. So this isn't simply a fairy tale. In the ancient world, such unions weren't merely accepted, they were ritualized. In Greek mystery cults, followers of Dionysus believed the god assumed animal form to join with his devotees. Men dressed as goat-legged satyrs, half-men, half-beast symbols of divine ecstasy and fertility. Women called maenads danced in ecstatic states, possessed by the god himself. In certain interpretations, this frenzy represented a form of divine penetration, literal or symbolic. And in ancient Egypt, gods frequently appeared with animal heads: crocodile, jackal, falcon, and frog. The frog-headed goddess Hecate connected to childbirth, resurrection, and the flooding Nile. Frogs symbolized fertility and divine metamorphosis. To merge with such entities was to invoke creation itself. To unite with a beast in these ceremonies wasn't debasement, it was devotion, a sacred act of joining with the divine, the supernatural, the other. But in certain places, the ceremony took an even stranger direction. In 12th century Ireland, Gerald of Wales documented a shocking kingship ceremony. A white mare was presented before the candidate. He would mimic a horse, recline beside her, and then the mare was slaughtered, boiled, and the men bathed in and consumed the broth. It was a symbolic marriage to the sovereignty goddess, a final remnant of a very ancient concept that authority must arrive through union with the other, and that the other once wore animal hide. In many societies, people believed the first humans weren't simply born, they were conceived through unions with something other. In Arctic mythology, there's the woman who wed a bear. She dwells with him, masters the forest's ways, and births children who can shift between human and bear forms. It's said the wisdom she acquired was transmitted to her descendants, igniting the beginnings of human civilization and consciousness. These legends weren't merely metaphors. Among many indigenous societies, people believed they literally descended from animals. In Siberia, North America, and regions of Africa and Asia, clans traced their ancestry to a snake, a wolf, a bear, or a crane, and honored that creature as both ancestor and guardian. These were known as totemic lineages, sacred bonds between humans and animals believed to be their forebears. And the narratives explaining them frequently commenced identically, a human and something beyond human coming together to produce a new kind of people. It's a mythological method of addressing a profound and ancient question: how did we become who we are? How did humans master speech, art, fire-making? For many societies, the answer was straightforward: we were altered by what we joined with. But this concept of a human joining with something otherworldly isn't limited to folk narratives. We discover it in Scripture. In Genesis, there's a peculiar, unsettling passage: the sons of God observed that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they claimed them as wives. From these unions emerged the Nephilim, giants, heroes, beings of tremendous strength and legend. It's a cryptic, ancient account, and theologians have disputed its meaning for centuries. Were these sons of God fallen angels, celestial beings, something else entirely? Whatever they were, the pattern is recognizable: the divine masculine, the mortal virgin, a union creating something new, a hero, a hybrid, or a catastrophe. In some of the earliest versions of the Frog Prince, this sacred union doesn't conclude with a kiss. It concludes with violence. Sometimes the frog is hurled. Sometimes beheaded, other times flayed or burned. It appears cruel, even disturbing. But to ancient minds, creation frequently arose from destruction. Throughout ancient mythology, sexual union followed by sacrifice formed a sacred pattern. This isn't merely a tragic romance. It's the remnant of seasonal ceremony: sacred union followed by sacrifice, fertility, death, rebirth. We observe it in the ancient legend of Inanna and Dumuzi. After their sacred union, the divine joining of heaven and earth, Dumuzi is captured by demons and dragged to the underworld. His death ensures the cycle of existence can recommence. In Mesopotamia, this wasn't merely mythology. It was ceremony. Annually, the king lay with a high priestess of Inanna to reenact the legend and symbolically renew the land's fertility. And perhaps the Frog Prince's destiny follows identical logic. In many ancient societies, violence wasn't merely connected to fertility, it was the very force through which the world materialized. In Babylonian legend, Tiamat, the great mother goddess, is a primordial sea serpent, part woman, part dragon. She births the first generation of deities from the depths. But when her offspring rebel, chaos ensues. Tiamat rises in rage, birthing monsters to annihilate them. And so Marduk, the storm deity, advances. He slays Tiamat, splitting her in half. From her remains, he fashions the world. Her ribs become the sky's vault. Her eyes become rivers. Her tail forms the Milky Way. Creation doesn't arrive peacefully. It's torn from the body of something ancient and strange. And the identical pattern echoes in the Frog Prince. A mortal maiden enters a sacred agreement. She unites with the other. And then at the climactic moment, he is destroyed. And through that destruction, he is revealed. Perhaps in its most ancient form, the tale didn't conclude with a prince and a wedding, but with the creation of a world. This is the Frog Prince's secret, not a bedtime story, not a romantic fairy tale, but an ancient people's myth, perhaps even a distorted remnant of how they believed the world began. So next time you hear a fairy tale, question whether you're truly hearing a children's story or a ceremony from time's dawn. But if the Frog Prince genuinely concerns sacred union with the other, what is Rumpelstiltskin concealing? A peculiar little man, an impossible agreement, and the power of a name. Click here to discover the 4,000-year-old myth buried inside Rumpelstiltskin. Until we meet again in a future video.